Smile, be, chat, join for networking.
Hi, hello everyone. Yes, I'm Mark Beaumont-Thomas. I'm the marketing manager of For Networking, but I'm not talking about For Networking today. Well, I'm a little bit, but I'm telling you all about Debbie and Mark's Le Jog, which I will explain. Debbie is my wife. Le Jog is not a park run in Paris, but Land's End to John O'Groats. So those of us in the cycling world, we know Le Jog, but for those of you who don't, that's what it means. And yes, I want to tell you about a little adventure I had in April where I cycled from Land's End to John O'Groats, 21 days of cycling, 1,200 miles, 50,000 feet of climbing, and I'm here to tell the tale and survived. And I want to tell you a few lessons I learned along the way, really, of how I did it and what I learned. So to start with, it's just all about planning. If you want to take on a big project, and to us this was a big project, you've got to plan it carefully. And we thought about this about 18 months before we did it. We thought, what's the route going to be? Are we going to be able to do it? And so the first thing we did was test that we could do this by doing a few practice runs where it's one thing to cycle 60 miles, it's another to do it 60 miles and then the next day 60 miles and the next day 60 miles with about 9 or 10 kilos in your pannier to stop you getting up the hills. So we had some practice weekends and it didn't kill us, so we thought we would go for it. So we did the practice, we then had to decide a route. There is a library of books on Le Jog. My wife has read all of them. I only read one of them, but we learned all sorts of things from various books, but then decided to do our own route instead of the classic route, goes straight up the west of the country. We actually live in Sheffield, which is not on the west of the country, so we wanted to come via Sheffield. Hence we did 1,200 miles, whereas on the signpost here it says it's a mere 874 miles. So we had a bit of a detour along the way. But we planned every date of the route. We planned accommodation. We booked accommodation up to about 3 months ahead for the whole route, which meant we had to go there. We had to keep going day after day to get to the next hotel or B&B stop. And so, yeah. The planning all went fine. We felt ready to do it. The next thing we had to think about was a cause. Why were we doing this? What was the reason? First reason was my 60th birthday in February. It's my wife's 60th birthday in August. And we thought, and some friends of ours who were coming up to that age had been set daft challenges by their friends. And so we thought before someone else sets us a daft challenge, let's set one for ourselves. And so that's what we decided to do. And then in terms of a charity, we thought, well, we want to raise some money for something. What will we do? And then really events rather overtook us and made the decision very straightforward as to the cause we were going to support. Almost exactly a year ago, my daughter, Ashley, her boyfriend, who is named on here, Indy Bakada, he died very suddenly of an undiagnosed heart condition, and that really knocked her for six and knocked the whole family for six. And we were really in quite a state about that for, well, and my daughter and all of us are still coming to terms with that. But he was a great supporter of Amnesty International, and not just a supporter, he did some active work and so on for that charity. And so really we thought, what a great way to honour his memory, but to raise money for Amnesty. So that became our cause. So we had our planning done, we had our cause done, and we set off, but we needed some help along the way, and this is where For Networking came in. They really have been a huge support in all sorts of ways. We wanted to obviously raise money along the way and gain awareness, so we had some leaflets designed and done, which were donated by a foreigner, Caroline Andrew Johnson of Fast Print. quick word from my sponsor here. Caroline would kill me if I didn't do that bit. So she very generously gave us a load of leaflets and these to wear in the pub and look a complete idiot in the evening, but it did mean that people would come up to us and go, "What? What's Le Jog? What are you doing?" And these proved invaluable in terms of just handing out randomly to people. We got quite a lot of donations along the route just by me shamelessly thrusting a leaflet into anybody's hand who looked even vaguely interested in what we were doing, and which was great. Also, the design for this was done by Paul Williams, who does a lot of design work for 4N. Again, he donated that to me. And then on day 5, we were up in Gloucestershire near Tetbury, and a guy called Julian Wellings, who does a lot of video work, he very generously did a complete video of us with an interview and spliced all sorts of clever stuff into it, and that then sits on the top of our Facebook page, and that was great, and another real bit of support. And then 4N really helped us along the way as well. We planned our route to go through Taunton, 4N HQ. We called in there, got a cup of coffee, met with the whole team there, and as you can imagine, trying to plan the right dates with when there's a 4N meeting on the right day and so on, it was a bit tricky, but we did find one meeting that fitted the bill, which was York breakfast on a Tuesday morning. And so we went to York breakfast, and we only snuck in at the last bit, I'm afraid. We didn't do the whole meeting, but we did have a very great welcome from them. We met Terry Cooper, the chairman of 4N, along the way. We rode, a couple of 4Ners rode with us for a few little bits of the way. So all the way through the journey, there was a nice 4N link going on, which was great. And we had lots of donations from 4Ners. We had a very generous donation, incredibly generous donation from 4N HQ itself to really kickstart our fundraising. So all in all, it was a great enabler of the whole project, which was fantastic. So we set off, Land's End, in the rain, but that one day where we went from Penzance to Land's End and back again. That was just a short little run and got absolutely soaked. But that was the only significant rain we had on the entire journey. So we really did have an amazing bit of luck with that. It was, I think, described as the driest April for 10 years or something. We chose April, even though it's quite early in the year, because any later than that in Scotland, Brian, oh, he's not here, but the midges come out and absolutely kill you any time during the summer. And so we thought we want to get up there while it's still cool and still not the midge season. But obviously April, anything can happen with the weather, and something did happen a bit later on, which I'll come on to, but no rain. So that was our first bit of luck. Luck played a part throughout, actually. We had no punctures. But we did have. I had a really serious chain jam in the middle of the Peak District, and really couldn't free it. I just couldn't fix it at all. So there we are, the bike's at the side of the road, chain absolutely jammed, 4 miles from our house. So, very luckily, my wife just cycled home, brought the car out, bike in the back of the car, and took it home. And then actually the next day was one of 2 rest days we had. We had a rest day in Sheffield, where we live, and took the bike to the bike shop and realised that actually just for having had one of these small tools, which I didn't have with me at the time, but which I invested in that day, would have helped me to free the chain and fix it. So that stays in my pannier every time now. But so that was another great bit of luck. We also, in terms of the weather and luck, as well as the dryness of the weather, the last day when we arrived in John O'Groats, fine, the weather. Looked on the weather forecast and literally blizzard Scotland on the night we were there. And we woke up the next morning to real snow on the ground. We did actually have to cycle. We only had to cycle 15 miles down the road from John O'Groats to Wick in order to be able to get the train back home again. But and that made for a slightly interesting ride, but that was fine just for that little bit of time. But we then, in the train, retraced a fair bit of our steps back through where we had cycled, and we went down through Aviemore, and it was a whiteout, absolute blizzard and whiteout, and we had cycled there 5 days previously in beautiful spring weather, so we were incredibly lucky that we just got out when the door slammed behind us in terms of the weather. So, so luck, we had plenty of that, which was great. We also, in terms of people, I mean, this journey wasn't about just getting there and doing it in 9 days. You know, people get down, and the real pros, of which I'm not. I mean, I'm doing my best today, got my Lycra on, being a real mammal, a middle-aged man in Lycra, but we're not serious cyclists. We're not members of a cycling club or anything like that. We're just afternoon cyclists who wanted to set ourselves a bit of a challenge. So we weren't going for it. I mean, we came across people up in Scotland where we were back on the classic route up here. Some of the places we were staying, the landladies there, they had all the time, they had people who were doing the challenge, and they would get people in there, and the landlady would go, "Oh, what have you seen today?" Road, you know, and they just hadn't seen anything, whereas we had seen, you know, we'd taken time, we had a diversion off to Lindisfarne to have a look at that. We had lunch with some friends. We made sure we saw the UK. I mean, how many times are you going to be able to do that and you see the sheer variety of the UK? For a 1,000-mile trip, I don't think there's anywhere else in the world where you see as much variety in terms of landscape, food, dialects, all sorts of different things, architecture as you go through, and we embraced all of that and wanted to make sure we saw that and took it all in. So we you know, we paced ourselves. I mean, I don't think we could have done 100 miles a day anyway, with particularly carrying the panniers and so on. But you know, we felt we were doing it right and seeing the landscape and so on. And we also saw friends. We literally, from there right up to Edinburgh and actually beyond, pretty well every day we met someone we knew. We'd arranged this obviously as part of our preparation, and we saw a guy in Edinburgh who we hadn't seen for 10 years, who we kept waiting because we'd had a real headwind. I say we were lucky with the weather. We did have a headwind quite a fair bit of the way, and that can really slow you down. And we'd had a real headwind on this bit here to get to Edinburgh. And he was waiting so long in this bar in Edinburgh to see us that he was completely pissed when we when we met him, and we literally had to explain to him 3 or 4 times, no, we're doing Land's End to John O'Groats, not the other way. He kept going, which way are you going? It's not difficult, David. We started there and we're now going up there. If you're going to watch this video, David, we love you, but yeah. So we saw lots of friends, and actually even more fun was some random meetings that we had with people along the way, just talking and stopping and talking to people. 2 in particular stand out. We, near where we had the video filmed, we stopped. There was this guy doing a dry stone wall, and he had just started and he'd got about a quarter of the way through it, and he was doing this absolutely brilliant bit of dry stone wall building. And so he got a leaflet, and when we got chatting, and he started following us on our Facebook page and started posting, and he started putting pictures of what he was doing, and he became known as Dry Stone Wall Andy to us, and we got this real dialogue going on the Facebook page. And at the end, when we had completed, he said, in the time you have gone 1,200 miles, I've gone 20 yards, and he showed us, but he showed us the completed dry stone wall that he'd done, and that was just great. And then the other one that was really fun was up in Scotland. We had another rest day in Perth, and then when we set off from there, we were going along, and anyone who we saw with panniers and laden down, we thought, there's a kindred spirit. We'll get talking to them. And this guy had panniers on the front and the back, so that was real hardcore. Turned out he was a French guy, and so he said, can I cycle with you for a bit? So yeah, we cycled about 20 miles with him up to Pitlochry. And while we were talking to him, we sort of said, he said, where are you going? He said, we started in Perth and we're going to Blair Athol today. And he said, well, actually, we're in total cycling from Land's End to John O'Groats. And we put on our expression of, and this turned into a real game of what we call cycling top trumps, because it turned out, he said, and he was a really nice guy, but he said, I am cycling around the world. Okay, Fabienne, you win. And it turned out he'd just started, but he was doing part of Scotland, then Ireland, then Canada, America, South America, everywhere, Asia, and back again. He's got a blog called A Bike Around the World, and he's still obviously out there somewhere, and we've kept following him. So those sort of random meetings were fantastic, and all part of the experience and the journey. So yeah, it was a really great experience. But it wasn't that difficult. It wasn't actually that hard. The bit in Scotland, which we thought, the Highlands, and there's a bit where you go up this 16-mile pass, and it's a non-stop climb. And when we got to the top of it, we went, is that it? The top of the Beaumont-Thomas Pass, and big selfie picture and all of that. And it really was, it sort of carves its way through the Highlands rather than going up and over it. And after we'd done training, we live near the Peak District, and there's some serious hills there. So anything that we came across beyond that was pretty easy, actually. And so in total, it wasn't actually an incredibly difficult experience, but it was just breaking the psychology of deciding to do it. And now that we have done it, we do genuinely feel a sense of achievement. I can show you an official certificate from the John O'Groats Cafe, no less. Yes, they give you one of those when you go in, which is you can join a Le Jog society, which we've not actually bothered with, I think. Yeah, so it was tough doing it, getting out there every day, and just being determined to go and do it. But I think the main message we came back with was if you've got an idea or something that you think is too big to even think about undertaking, then just step back a bit, have a bit of a plan, think about it, break it down into bite-sized chunks, and actually then be determined to actually go for it and do it. And we really do feel a great sense of achievement, and all of our sort of contemporaries, our sort of 60-something friends go, wow, how did you do that? And we feel, well, it wasn't too bad, but actually, 9 out of 10 of them could do it if they wanted to. And we've inspired a few of our friends to dig out the old bike and get on the bike. I mean, they talk about cycling is the new golf, that it's now actually a thing for 40, 50, 60-year-olds to do. And, I certainly embrace that. I think it is something that, it's a low-impact thing to do. It's for boys, there's gear and there's all sorts of stuff you can buy and spend lots of useless money on, and lots of gadgets and all of that sort of stuff. So, you can see how it's growing in popularity, and all of the facilities along the way. I mean, there were so many routes now that we were able to choose that made sure we weren't on main roads. We didn't go on any dual carriageways, any A roads. The only A roads we went on were in Scotland, where there's literally A roads that are single track with passing places. But generally we avoided and went on minor roads, because there are people who do that road bit and die every year, going up the A38 or the A9 in Scotland and get hit by lorries and so on. So just because they're obsessed with achieving a particular time. If you move away from that and just treat it as a great way to tour the UK, then I really can recommend it as a great thing to do. We did also have a business idea along the way. As you are going along, thinking, between us, we thought, actually, one of the main things that slowed us down was carrying the panniers. Without those, we did about 60 miles a day. You could easily do 80 miles a day, which would actually knock several days off the journey. I mean, I was very lucky. Total 3.5 weeks off, which is easily the longest amount of time I've ever had off since being self-employed, and Debbie had to take that time off work, and it created quite an undertaking to have that length of time off. If you could shave, say, a week off that, then it becomes more achievable by the average person fitting in with their normal working year. And you could do that if someone carried these for you. And so there is a small bit of detail in this business plan in that we do need to buy a motorhome, but leaving that little detail aside and assuming we've got ourselves a motorhome, we could then carry people's panniers. These are, for those of you who don't know the technical phrase, a pannier here. Carry people's panniers from one location to the next, do that in batches of, say, 3 or 4 couples who are doing it. Give advice on the routes, have a bit of a mechanical kit to sort people out, and so on. I mean, there are large organisations that offer this sort of service, but we think now that we've got the certificate and can say we've done the thing. So when we got back, we have registered the domain name paniertaxi.co.uk, and that's the sum. That £5 is the sum total of the business investment so far, but possibly as some sort of semi-retirement idea, and we would accompany people and do a bit of cycling along the way, and it would be a great way for us to combine the love of cycling around the place with a little bit of business as well. So you heard it here first if it comes to fruition. But yeah, so we went out there, we did it, we enjoyed it, we came back in one piece. I would thoroughly recommend doing it as an achievement, and if you want any help and advice on doing that, I can give you that. And if it isn't Le Jog, if it's something else, just plan it, get out there and do it. Thank you.
Smile, be chat, join for